Okay, hey, we're back, and this time this is going to be really different. This is Curtis. This is Curtis George, and he's normally behind the camera. He and Sean Browning are the guys who put the YouTube thing together and talked me into doing all this. And so it's Curtis's turn to endure my interview technique. So this is going to be kind of fun.
Yeah,
You're
I'm
used
looking
to being
forward to
over there. So,
Yeah, it's nice.
Well, this is going to be kind of cool. I mean, we've known each other for a while now. And
hmm
is Winona Lake your home? Are you from here?
It is, yeah. I grew up on a trailer park off of Worcester Road. So Worcester Road, for non-locals, is a mile from here, a mile and a half or something.
It dead ends up here by the college, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So it's just right down the road. My family and I think in 1999, my father bought this place in Winona, and yeah, Winona's just enthralled me and lured me in, and that's been my home ever since.
Tell them how old you are.
I'm 28.
Yeah, I literally have T-shirts older than him, and you're playing with guys that are, most of us are 40 years older than you.
Yeah.
So that's got to be.
Yeah, it feels
got to be different.
Right. It feels natural to me though. Growing up, closer friends ended up always being adults. My taste in music and art always lended towards people that maybe understood it better or celebrated it, which is normally adults. And of course, being a musician, yeah, I would obviously want to play with competent people. And all the time, you know, I couldn't get my peers to take music as seriously as I did. You know, I'd try to encourage them. You know, I'd constantly showing them records I was into and what have you, but the passion wasn't there beyond, you know, either a hobby or just, you know, I want to be the next Bon Jovi or something. So yeah, it's fitting. It makes sense for me to be playing with older people right now.
And how old were you
feels
when
natural.
you first started playing?
I'm not sure. Maybe around anywhere from 9 to 12 years old.
Okay.
I started playing in 5th grade. My mother wanted me to do some extracurricular activities, and her brother at the time was teaching drum lessons. So she's like, oh, well, you know, that's an easy in. Why don't you just hang out with your uncle and learn how to play the drum set? And I did that. And of course, I fell in love with it, and it was demystifying on what I heard on records that I liked, you know, growing up on these are how they're making these sounds, and it felt very sensical for me to continue to pursue that.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned your uncle. We've already mentioned your uncle, Dave Oliver.
Yeah.
And there's a unique connection with Sean Browning and all this. So
Yep.
you know, talk about Dave, Uncle Dave.
Yeah. So, yeah, Dave's the man. Where do I start? Of course, I always knew him as just this jocular and warm uncle, you know, of course. And his heyday was like, at least as far as him being a music fan, was probably the 90s. So he loved all of this alternative rock and, you know, more heavier, you could probably call hard rock. And so it made sense for him. It made sense for him to be a drummer in that regard because he loves hitting hard, and he was very enthusiastic about that. So yeah, Dave's the man. He was the drummer for our boss and label head of Rottweiler.
Yeah.
Sean Browning, which is pretty wild. He drummed for both the Migraines in the mid 2000s.
Yeah.
And Grave Robber, which is crazy. So, small world around here apparently. So,
well, and then what's unique is after I married my wife, Jennifer Savage, who played on the first album, we bought a house that's about a half mile from Dave's. And when I first moved here in 2006, wandered down to Dave's house a few times and jammed.
yeah,
And then I started playing with a local guy, Gary Gerard, and he went through a whole bunch of band name changes, and now it's just 3G, or the Gary Gerard Group. And Dave was in that band, and that's how
Yeah.
that's how you and I came to know each other. Basically.
Yeah. So Dave was playing with you and Gary whenever he needed a fill in, and Dave couldn't one time, and he gave Gary my number, as he did with most of his gigs whenever he couldn't fill in, because I kept up with drumming, all this time and was consistently pursuing it. So, yeah, Gary, hired me in for the gig, and on John and I's first night meeting, which was particularly special, we sat next to each other and was just chatting up, learning each other, and he was impressed that I knew who Nietzsche was.
Yeah.
And that was sort of, from that moment onward, I was certainly convicted of a special friendship, and I've thus been proven of that. But, yeah, that's how I met you.
I tried to figure out when we met, and I have a journal that I write down all the gigs. I know, a little anal retentive on that kind of thing, but I tried to figure out when was the first gig that we played, and it was either in December of 2015 or in February of 2016.
Yeah,
I'm not really sure. I just know it was the winter time because it was cold.
Yeah.
And the place we played was a little town called Mentone.
Yeah.
Had to park outside the establishment, and they had the snowplows had gone through, and the snow was up against the sidewalk, so you had to carry your stuff to get to the gig over all this snow. And I hate that. I've always been my own roadie.
Brutal.
But I remember that. I know it was in the wintertime when we first met.
Yeah, you're right.
So.
Yeah, you're definitely right.
And then when did you become a full-time member of 3G? Do you
remember? Honestly, I think it was pretty quick. I think it was a few times after that.
16.
Yeah, it was around 2016. And so, which was great, because you and I just, were able to learn each other as musicians and play live consistently, and, really, really observe each other in a musical frame, which was very beneficial for what would come.
Well, when you were in high school, you were involved with a local drum teacher. You want to talk about him? And
I can do that.
You were in competitions too, right?
Yeah, so I suppose this could probably start in middle school, actually, where it was encouraged to be in band, but at the time I was convicted that I was going to be a professional BMX rider. So all of my time was spent either drumming or BMXing, and I was encouraged at the time, of course, to take the music courses in middle school and be a part of that. But yeah, I refused. I didn't imagine myself having the time because I was just working on bike riding. But in high school, I by way of just people surrounding me at the time, they kind of forced me to make a decision of, what are you going to spend your time on? It's either going to be music or the BMX thing. And at that time, music was just the pinnacle of my identity. And it really fueled me. It really, really sculpted me in numerous ways. So I went with the music, thankfully. And I was a bit behind in learning music because freshman year, a bunch of my percussive peers had already known theory, and they're 2 years into learning the fundamentals of music. And so luckily I had a very, very good teacher named Mickey Ratliff, and he was very gracious, and my youth was very challenging and often ugly, and he was extremely considerate of that. And I definitely blame a lot of my musical insight or some of my conviction on how to play on his lessons and his encouragement, and even records that I learned through him, of learning odd arrangements from Rush and Rod Morgenstein.
Mickey's a Rush fanatic.
Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
played with Mickey a time or two, and
sure.
This guy's a human metronome.
Yeah, he's the man. Yeah, so that was really instrumental, and of course through then there was great programs. There was like a winter percussion program, of which you'd play in this ensemble of maybe 15 to 20 people, and you'd go around the Midwest in these competitions, and that was just so instrumental in me. It was so musical. You know, it was at that point I had only played drum set in a rock band context, you know, and so playing with so many other instruments in an ensemble, but playing drum set, you know, and trying to be this fusion rock drummer in that context was a challenge, sure, but it was a remarkable gift. It's truly invaluable. So yeah, those high school years were
You won
wonderful.
some competitions, right?
Yeah, absolutely. A number of competitions. Yeah, there was percussion competitions that I attended for probably 3-4 years consistently, and I was able to pull away with a lot of awards, which was pretty great. Definitely the first time I had won anything.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Oh, beside what you've done with 3G and some of the bands you had in high school, because you
Yeah.
went through all that, you know, having high school bands,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
and then the
So
two
many
albums
bands.
you've done with me,
Yeah.
the Salt Projects. You've got a few other things in the fire right now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, all throughout high school, I was playing in as many bands as I could conjure. Just like now, you know, I wanted to play in every genre. And yeah, that was consistent. And then after high school, I did the same thing. I moved to Bloomington and pursued the same thing and being in people's home studios and touring and playing in, you know, whatever bands at the time, mainly punk. But yeah, since then, that bug has definitely never left. Right now, I just joined a metal act called Hail Shot, and we are working on, you know, reforging that band in a totally new direction. And I'm very grateful to have signed on. It's been really challenging, and it's been really fun to listen to metal again, which is a genre that I no longer gravitate towards outside of youth. You know, those youthful days. And then, of course, you and I are going to be sculpting the next Salt record, the next 6 months to a year, you know, which is all of our odd prog and fusion, and that's going to be a wonderful and challenging thing. And, man, what else do I have going? I have a project based in San Diego, in California, with a pianist and a producer by the name of Zach Hodge. He's excellent, and him and I have a incredibly same taste on experimental music and avant-garde electronic music that's based on synthesizers, and yeah, always have some project up my sleeve for sure.
That's good.
Yeah. I can't not scratch that itch, you know.
Well, talking about that, I mean, my next big question for you is,
Yeah.
what do you consider your main influences as a musician?
Yeah, there's a few things I could probably say here. My main influences, well, the obvious ones to begin with are other musicians that I look up to. For a start, Jojo Mayer, a Swiss drummer that I admire, and Tony Williams, his work with Miles Davis, and you know, this is as a drummer, and as you know, it's kind of an infinite list of drummers I look up to. But yeah, I think my main influence is more on the narcissistic side of just trying to entertain whatever innate drive in me there is to express and create. You know, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of options, and other than pursuing that. So, yeah, honestly, I think my main inspiration is just following that path to see where it leads.
Well, and your taste, your ability to work outside of maybe the genre that you like the most, your ability to at least have a working knowledge it's very interesting at your age, because I mean, I've not met anybody your age who knows who King Crimson is.
Sure, yeah.
Or you had a drum teacher who was a Rush fanatic.
Yeah.
And so you've been exposed to prog rock and very, very intricate, intense music. At
absolutely.
a young age.
Yeah, and I would encourage others to do the same. I mean, to me, there's really no two ways about it. Like, it's really hard. I mean, I even go as far as, I'll bet this is a little extreme. I go as far as saying that you're probably not a real big music fan if you like one genre of music. Because, yeah, music is just this endlessly multifaceted, gargantuan canvas of expression that really, when you boil it down to something like artistic expression, all music is the same thing, and you never want to lose merit. You never want to attempt to call bad art. But yeah, I really it's hard not to be influenced and affected by multi genres because it falls into this window of just this this need to create for whoever across time.
Well, a friend of mine years ago, a guy by the name of Denny Chiosa, who is a brilliant jazz guitarist living in Nashville now, he told me something one time. He said, well, every genre has its audience. And whether or not that genre is thing du jour at the moment, it doesn't matter. I mean, blues has been around forever, and it's always going to have an audience. And I've always been into prog rock. I've always had people tell me, well, nobody listens to prog rock anymore, which when you interpret that, what they're saying is, I don't listen to prog rock. But there's no reason to say nobody listens to it, because otherwise bands like King Crimson would not have had their 50th anniversary tour. Yes is, I think, touring in Europe right now or something.
Yeah.
Kansas has a new album out. I mean,
right.
There's a whole smorgasbord of European prog bands that are out there. So, yeah,
Right.
it's a genre that gets listened to. I'm not a huge fan of country, playing it as a bass player, but I can find a lot to enjoy listening to.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can find any genre of music, you can find something you're going to enjoy listening to.
Yeah.
Whether or not you end up playing it or not.
Yeah. I had to learn that lesson. I took a gig. It was a dinner theater gig, and I had to play a character. And I was part of... it was playing a bunch of old Hank Williams tunes. What's Walking After Midnight? Patsy Cline.
Yeah.
So I learned like 40 plus Patsy Cline tunes, and that to me, for someone, despite things I've just previously said, I had a certain contempt for modern country, and I didn't feel like I understand it, or what I did understand, whatever I did understand about country, I thought shouldn't be understood. It shouldn't be entertained. It's so poor. But just like you, I just learned like how remarkable and beautiful and timeless and really genuine these songs were from, again, both Patsy Cline and Hank Williams. So after taking that gig, that helped really cement the full spectrum of genres of learn to appreciate them. So you're right, they have their...
It teaches you too that you're a drummer, I'm a bass player, we're the rhythm section.
Yeah.
So we're in the background.
Uh-huh.
And it's not about us.
Yeah.
We get our moments, and we're going to share one of those moments soon, hopefully, if we can play it right.
Yeah.
There's a moment on the new album. There's a thing called Please Don't Feed the Rhino, which we're going to attempt to play live in the studio here.
Yeah.
And record it.
Attempt meaning
Attempt.
Successfully.
That's the operative word.
Sure.
But really, you learn a lot as a musician when you have to sit back and... You don't have to show all your chops at once. You can appreciate the music. You can make the other people shine.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Well, I mean, and there's so many cases where you're the 4 on the floor, so people can dance, and your snares on 2 and 4, so people can clap.
Your timekeeper.
Yeah, of course, which is great. Which just what you said. It's like it's giving other people a platform, i.e. the song. The melody that entrances people, and that 2 and 4 rock group is like nearly age old now. In the past century. But yeah, it's so wonderfully quintessential and doesn't get old. Like recently, I've been trying to listen to more modern DJs and understanding what the appeal of that is, of just a really repetitive, boom, 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 at a rave, In the last few years, I feel like I get it, and I normally thought uh, that wasn't really valid, as either a genre or um, as a musician. So yeah, that four on the floor, so people can have this harmonious and collective experience to music is really innate in that.
But you go back and listen to some of the big band stuff.
Yeah,
In the Mood. That's you know that's 2 and 4,
Sure.
and that's a 1-4-5 progression.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
It's about as simple as can be as far as that end of it.
Yeah.
But you listen to what's going on. That's an amazing piece of music.
Yeah.
There's
Oh,
some big
absolutely.
band stuff that's just mind-boggling.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, some of the most moving and profound stuff has been just utterly minimalist. So, yeah, I agree on the not showing your chops point.
Well, you just came up with a new set of drums too. I mean,
Yeah.
you're always every time I turn around, it's we live about 45 minutes from Sweetwater, and this is not a commercial for Sweetwater. I've said before they don't endorse anybody. At least I don't have an endorsement with them. But that is, it's kind of a black hole for musicians' money, but it's a marvelous place.
Yeah, yeah.
And
it is.
so
It's
we
convenient.
usually make a kind of a bi-weekly trip in there anyhow. But
Yep.
you came up with a new set of drums. over
Yeah. I recently pulled the trigger on some new drums. Tama has this series called Hyperdrive, and that is the toms are essentially cut in half, so you get this real focused attack. Again, more fusion oriented sound, which I absolutely love for a couple reasons. Not only sonically is it very attractive, but just position wise. In the '80s, you'd have these huge, bombastic, massive tom drums. Phil Collins, for example, of which I love, but for me, I loved everything real low down and tight, almost like a Ginger Baker type thing. And so Tama doing that to those toms, I was just like instantly in love. So yeah, I've had my eye on them for a while, and yeah, I just sold a Star Classic kit, and so I have 2 to 3 drum sets that are kind of in rotation, and now I have a crown jewel of sorts that's really, molded to my style and playing.
Well, when we saw King Crimson, I was kind of amazed at Gavin Harrison.
Yeah,
He
he's the
had
man.
these long acrylic
Mm-hmm.
toms that were
Yeah, those like Octobahn maybe to his left.
Those were those were unique.
Yeah, they're so cool. He was one of my idols in high school, so seeing him play with, one of the greatest bands of all time was just really mind-melding for a contemporary drummer.
Well, what kind of advice would you give to any young drummer or
Sure.
musician in general?
Um,
Aside from don't quit your day job. So
yeah, there is something in that. I wouldn't recommend quitting your day job. It's good to... Yeah, I could probably try to say a few things here. On that front, it is good to realize the impossibility of what you're trying to do, of being a musician and having a career that route. But having said that, growing up, I had this vision of the music industry almost looking like Mordor, something out of like Lord of the Rings, where you have these really intimidating...
everybody's against you. Everybody wants to
Yeah.
kill you.
Right.
All right.
Sure. But I just had this vision, this feeling of being at this big black gate of either the music industry or just being a validated artist, and the impossibility and the intimidation of getting on the other side of that cathedral. And then I had this revelation, maybe 10 years ago or something now, that in truth, both the world, the people in it, and the people in it want what you have to give. So I began much less cynical in realizing that the music industry, or just people in general, they want what you have to give. I think if you have something in you that you feel compelled to create, you should follow that, and know that if you have good people around you, then they'll encourage that. They'll want to see it blossom, because, I mean, you don't know, how should I say this? You don't quite know what following that bug in you will gift you. It's impossible to tell. So, I've had truly the absolutely profound and incomparable relationships and experiences solely through my love of music. And yeah, there's just, I mean, I'm often in disbelief about how rich my life is strictly because of following music. I mean, it's absolutely mind blowing. I could have never designed it. I could have never had the foresight to see it. But if I would have entertained whatever was in me to think that there was something invaluable in art, then yeah, I never would have experienced those things. So if you have that and you definitely follow that out, advice. Yeah, and I don't know. It's hard to say more that you aren't going to find with a simple Google search. I mean, discipline is so incredibly important, and being humble. I think the consequence of being born, as as you can say, is an incredibly hard thing, and being human is very challenging and complex. So yeah, in your musicianship, stay humble and don't hesitate to be honest about your shortcomings or what you need to work on, and of course just find people that are really good that have acquired some hard-earned knowledge in the field and try to learn from them, for sure. So that's probably my advice.
Well, and then one thing I think too, I mean, you kind of touched on it a little bit, is that you focus on your art, and if you focus on the business end of the music business, it'll suck the life right out of you.
Yeah.
The business end of it it will ruin your spirit. Let's put it that way.
Sure, it can. I agree.
I know a lot of people who, I lived in Nashville for a number of years. I know a lot of people who have all the high hopes and that start getting shot down, and they haven't developed a thick enough skin yet to put up with rejection. And if you just look at the business end of it, it really can mess with the joy that music can give you. So you gotta separate that. And there's an article I read years ago. I can't remember. It was one of those soul singing groups, and they were talking about some of their legal problems. And the one guy they were interviewing, he said, "Well, we had a manager who messed us over, so we got an attorney." And then we found out we had to get an attorney to watch the first attorney.
Yeah, for sure. Is this like a Delphonics or Commodores or something like that?
No, it was one of those, where all the guys dressed the same and sing,
Yeah.
It was an interesting article because if that happens to you, it just can really take the joy of what you love about music away from you, and you got to separate that from what you've just said.
Yes, I think so too.
Learn how to develop relationships with other musicians.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, on that point, I can also say that the money aspect is crucial, but just what John, the whole classic joke of don't quit your day job, it's like you want to be responsible and you want to be a productive member of your community and your society.
So we need to move away from Sweetwater. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, Right. So, I mean, there's just a natural balance that comes in. And I will say, actually, I just thought of this, but something else on the feeling intimidated front is to not refrain from using modern, things like social media and the like to get your craft out. Because maybe I'm speaking to myself here more so than our audience, but you and I can both speak to kind of the woes of social media and just like on the opening of the record on Trophy Hunting for Unicorn screens. It's like you and I philosophically line up so dead on with this point and our concern. And yeah, social media is definitely a culprit of a lot of ills, I think, in our society. But don't ascribe those ills to the platforms wholly to the point that you are refusing to use them to connect with people for your career. Don't hesitate to use those to share your stuff, because it is very hard to find an audience without it, even with a good record label behind you. So you gotta find your people. The
traditional record label that I grew up understanding in the 1960s and 70s, that doesn't exist anymore. And the internet,
Sure.
there's a good and a bad to it. And one of the bad is there's all these streaming services. Hardly anybody makes any money. But the good side is now everybody can get their music out there. You
Yeah,
can
which is
create
great.
your own audience, as
Right.
Curtis was saying.
Yeah, which it really is a wonderful thing. You kind of have to have the gusto when someone isn't doing the work, but that's just an essential part nowadays of what it means to make it as a musician. So you have to be multifaceted in that way, which is a really good thing. I think we're very lucky to live in an age where we have the consequence of globalism. So someone in the Philippines can hear what you're doing in Indiana. I mean, how cool is that?
Yeah, we've got a fan who's a label mate in
Yeah,
Indonesia, of all places.
Right. So that's
Hi,
a really
Andre.
beautiful thing.
If you're out there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
well, another thing is the technology too. I'm
Yeah.
still focusing basically on what analog recording is like, and that is that's in the Smithsonian now probably. I mean, I still have a hard time wrapping my head around digital work, but
Sure.
Curtis
Well, you got
is
me for
really between Curtis and Tim Bershon.
Yeah.
And
We
my
got you
wi-
covered,
and my
man.
wife yelling at me that this is now the 21st century. So
yeah, we love you regardless, and
yeah, so
I can definitely speak for Tim on this point. I think as well as we both just find it a deep honor to celebrate and help you hone your ideas. So, yeah, no worries on that front.
but
I'm
yeah, the
grateful
digital
to-
it's still kind of a headache to me at times. But
Yeah.
with what the internet has provided us and with all the new technology now, I mean, you don't need a record label. I mean, Sean Browning had a comment. He said basically, record label turns into a bank. They pay for everything. Well, now you don't need tens of thousands of dollars to put out a decent product. You can buy some equipment that you're going to continually use
Yeah.
for that same kind of money
Mhm.
and really learn how to use it and produce a product that years ago would cost a small fortune and take months to do.
That is absolutely true. Yeah, I mean the tech, how much tech is in a poor musician's hand is crazy nowadays. It's really accessible. I mean, if you have a laptop and some microphones, and like a basic, even a free interface, you can start making songs that are very listenable and they're decently produced. So pros and cons with everything, but more people being musicians and artists, I'll take it.
Well, any final thoughts? Anything you want to say that I might not have touched on?
I don't think so. I mean, other than I can use this moment to express how grateful I am to know you and be a part of this.
Ah, thanks, dude.
Yeah, I mean, that's just been a huge, huge gift to me. One, just like the aforementioned, following that unknown path is just, it's so serendipitous to meet someone so like-minded and to have similar musical influences and similar goals is just, I mean, it's really rare, and you'll realize that the moment you start making music or the moment you start pursuing that path, it's
Well,
rare to someone
Yeah, to
who
meet
meshes with
somebody
you so well.
who understands the type of music that we like in Warsaw, Indiana.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
How
Yeah, we're just
unusual
middle of
is
nowhere.
that? So,
Oh yeah, absolutely. Just absolutely middle of nowhere. Where there isn't a lot of culture or pursuit.
there's
of
cornfields,
music.
there's bean fields.
Yeah,
That we have.
we got fields.
So,
But I mean that's part of it though.
So-
That'll inspire you to do something special.
Mhm.
If it doesn't already exist here. So. All right,
all right, man. Hey,
that was good.
great, wonderful.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you.
Nice, John.